She faced more than her fair share of struggles in life.
She lived a life that had many obstacles.
She lost a child. She also suffered from a physical disability.
But she was finally picking up the pieces.
She was not discouraged. She continued to work hard.
She seems to be doing better.
She was looking for love.
The future looked bright until a breaking news story changed everything.
Her child was found wandering in the street.
Everyone's asking, where is Nicole?
Something's not right.
This is more than a missing child. This is a missing person.
Did her search for love lead her down a dangerous road?
They're wondering, did she meet up with the wrong guy?
Why do you keep calling them? Because he's not answering.
She was being secretive about it.
Just thinking about doing something, not sure about.
Come to find out, he's given a fake phone number.
The investigation will draw detectives into the darkest corners of their city. But will the truth ever see the light of day?
Days turns into weeks. Weeks turn into months.
I searched for her everywhere.
Go be a man.
Is she gonna have some justice?
Oh my God.
He's pure evil.
December 12th, 2016, Detroit, Michigan, a city once known as the heart of America's automotive industry, is undergoing a renaissance.
The city of Detroit it's Motown, right? It's the Motor City.
Going back several years, we had, the auto crisis, the recession. We had this housing crisis.
Around 2016, Detroit started seeing better days. Companies started moving back. There was a lot of energy.
The city is really on the comeback now.
Longtime Detroit resident Conrad Green has lived through all the city's ups and downs. But nothing could prepare him for what he experienced on that cold Monday morning.
My wife and I were sitting, looking at television, looking at the news as we normally do. And my wife got a call.
Yes, speaking.
And it was the Genesis House. Genesis House was a transition house for homeless women.
Conrad's granddaughter, Nicole Smith, was temporarily living there with her son, Isaiah.
They're saying Nicole and Isaiah aren't at the home.
What? Hold on.
Just then, Conrad sees a shocking news bulletin flash across the TV screen.
Simultaneously, I saw Isaiah on the television.
The photo is shown of his great-grandchild, Isaiah, who's only 18 months old. He's instantly concerned.
According to the newscaster, Isaiah had been found wandering the streets of Detroit's West Side all on his own.
Thankfully, the young boy is now safe.
Isaiah was dropped off at a fire station by a Good Samaritan.
Conrad immediately springs into action.
So he contacts the local police precinct that's holding Isaiah, and he says, hey, this is my great-grandchild. He rushes down there.
Along the way, Conrad and his wife try to reach their granddaughter, Nicole, by phone.
They're frantically trying to get a hold of her, and they can't.
I continued to call Nicole, and I used the firm granddad voice. Nicole, call me. She never did.
News quickly spreads to the rest of the family, who were also unable to reach Nicole.
I got the call, and I'm like, what is going on? Y'all seen Nicole? I'm like, no.
I'm like, this ain't normal. It's something wrong. Nicole is not going to abandon her kids. She's not going to leave them on the streets nowhere.
Everyone's asking, where is Nicole?
Detroit native Nicole Smith was used to overcoming hardships.
She developed problems when she was a baby. She had seizures. She limped on her right side, and she didn't really have full strength or use on her left side.
But Nicole displayed remarkable courage in the face of her numerous health challenges.
She was not an oh, woe is me person. No, she did take it in stride.
Nicole was very vibrant. She was bubbly.
Nicole is a very caring, loving, family-oriented young lady. Her cousins was her friends. You know what I'm saying? She loved her music. She was funny.
Nicole also loved her longtime boyfriend, Damian Carver, and the couple wanted nothing more than to start a family together.
Well, Nicole was interested in being a mother.
And in the fall of 2007, her dream came true.
She got pregnant and had her first daughter, Kilana.
Tragically, though, heartbreak was on the horizon.
Kilana only lived for 5 months. She ended up dying of Cribb's death.
It was a devastating moment for the young couple, but in time, they decided to try again.
She ended up having a son 2 years after Kilana passed. Then the next year, she had a daughter, and then she had the youngest girl.
She was a good mother. She did anything and did the world for her kids.
However, when the couple's middle child began experiencing medical issues, it put further stress on their relationship.
They both were having problems with fully taking care of the 3 children. Then it was just really a lot for both of them. They needed help.
Family members took in the couple's children while they worked on building a stable home.
Their relationship, it was being tumultuous and what have you.
Nicole and Damian eventually split. And around the same time, Nicole's mother passed away.
This was another hard time for Nicole.
She didn't have a job or a home of her own. She was suffering mentally and physically. That meant Nicole was especially vulnerable.
Although I and the rest of the family was a source of support for her, she was still having difficulties. She ended up getting pregnant and having Isaiah. And she didn't know who the father was.
However, Isaiah's birth in 2015 proved to be a turning point in Nicole's life.
Isaiah, his first words were mama.
Isaiah was a mama's boy. Anywhere that Nicole would go, he was on her tail.
They went and lived in the Genesis house, or transition house for homeless women. Genesis house was trying to help her get her own home, and she was in the process of it. She was actually supposed to move there maybe like within a month.
The more strides Nicole took towards building a happier life, the more she wanted someone to share it with.
Nicole was putting herself out there. She was starting to date again.
She loved her man. The ones she deal with, she gonna try to go all out to do what she gotta do to make him happy. She was looking for love.
But now, a breaking news report has seized her family's attention.
Isaiah had been found on the street. Well, I got up right away and went to the police station.
When Conrad and his wife arrive at the station, they're relieved to be reunited with their great-grandson.
And Isaiah saw me and said, "Granddad, Granddad," and ran to me. And, I picked him up and held him. And so, where's your mommy? Where's your mommy? He didn't say anything.
Conrad tells the police no one has been able to reach his granddaughter Nicole since learning of her disappearance.
Something's not right.
And I said, well, this is more than a missing child. This is a missing person.
Let us know if you haven't heard from her by tomorrow morning, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Sweet.
All right, come on.
As night settles over the city, Nicole's family is beginning to fear the worst.
I kept calling her the whole night. The whole night.
Did she have a health emergency? Did someone attack her?
She ain't never did that one. Just disappeared. Never. I knew something was wrong.
The morning after her 18-month-old son was found wandering the streets of West Detroit, police officially declare 33-year-old Nicole Smith a missing person.
Her family had been trying to contact her nonstop for the last 24 hours.
The biggest question is, how does this 1-year-old child become separated from their mother?
When detectives speak with Nicole's grandfather, that's exactly what they want to find out.
When was the last time you saw Nicole?
Sunday afternoon, she and Isaiah came over to the house.
Nicole always visited us on Sundays, and I would pick her up at Genesis. She would come and spend a few hours with us, and then I'd take her back home.
However, Conrad says when he picked Nicole and Isaiah up that afternoon, something was troubling her.
Hey.
Nicole said, "Granddad, I'm going to do something, and I don't know if I should do it or not." And so she had been being private around that time. So I said, well, Nicole, we brought you up right. You know how to make good decisions. And if you need some help, let us know, because we'll help you.
If you have any questions or need help with anything, just let us know, okay?
Thanks, Granddad.
You're welcome.
So anyway, we got to the house, and Nicole did her normal thing. "Hi, Granny, how you doing?" Went through all of that.
Leaving Nicole and Isaiah with his wife, Conrad subsequently went out to run an errand. But when he returned, his granddaughter was gone.
When I got back to the house, Nicole wasn't there, and Isaiah wasn't there either.
Did Nicole and Isaiah leave?
Are they not downstairs?
He went upstairs, where Nicole at. My grandma was like, she downstairs. We was like, no, she ain't downstairs.
The plan was for me to drive her and Isaiah back to Genesis' house. She didn't say anything about getting picked up.
And that's something that is really one of our rules. You need to tell us when you're leaving the house. It's just for knowledge of where you're at in case something's happened to you.
Do you have any idea who might have picked Nicole up?
I really don't. I'm always the one who drives her.
The family revealed Nicole suffered from seizures and she had some physical disabilities.
It's possible that something bad has happened medically, maybe not even something criminal.
Still, Conrad can't get that last conversation he had with Nicole out of his mind.
I felt actually a sense of dread because she told me that she might be doing something that she didn't know if she should do or not. And so my mind went to, I wonder, did she do what she thought she shouldn't do?
Detroit investigators share the family's concerns and immediately get to work trying to track Nicole down.
Nicole had been missing since December the 11th. So that would be our starting point. And we would work backward from there.
They start calling hospitals. They check homeless shelters, and nobody had seen her.
We go back to the fire station because that is where Isaiah was turned over to the battalion chief there and the firefighter. So those two individuals were interviewed.
According to the firemen, a man walked into the station the previous afternoon with Isaiah in tow.
They're told that the man who dropped off Isaiah is a Black man in his 30s.
He said he was on his way somewhere and observed this child wandering in the street alone.
I seen this kid just wandering the block, not a parent in sight. I thought maybe you guys could help.
He was instantly concerned, and so he picked up Isaiah, took him to the fire department.
He provided the name of Robert Johnson and also at that time provided a telephone number.
That's the number he gave us.
We'll give it a shot.
Okay. They want to talk to this Good Samaritan just in case there's some additional information, something he may have seen to help them with their investigation.
But when detectives reach out to Robert, they run into a problem.
They call the number, a young female answers. They ask about Robert Johnson, and she says, I don't know Robert Johnson. I had never heard of this person. Why would a Good Samaritan leave them the wrong telephone number?
On the mind of a detective, that's a clue.
This Good Samaritan may not be such a Good Samaritan after all.
"24 hours after Nicole Smith disappeared, Detroit detectives have just made an
As Robert Johnson, just a Good Samaritan, who happened to see this child wandering about with no adults in sight and took it upon himself, in a sense, to rescue the child.
But now investigators are wondering if this Robert Johnson is really who he says he is.
Come to find out, he's given a fake phone number.
We begin to conduct our queries to try to identify who this individual was.
Unfortunately, there were no cameras at the fire station. They instantly go back to the family asking, have you ever heard of Robert Johnson?
We was just all at home trying to just figure out who it could have been, who is this person, because we never met the person.
Fortunately, Nicole's cousin Ashley comes forward with information that she believes could help the investigation.
It was actually like my daughter who actually started coming up with suggestions because they was real kind of close.
There was this guy that she was talking to on the phone a lot.
Do you know his name?
No, she never told me his name.
She was happy. She just on the phone, she lollygagging.
But Ashley's interactions with her mysterious male friend weren't all positive.
I watched my cousin call his phone from sun up to sundown one day. He's sitting in that dining room and kept redialing that number. I said, Nicole, what is you doing? Why did you keep dialing the number?
What are you doing? Why do you keep calling them? Because he's not answering.
She said he was supposed to come over or come get me, something like this. I'm like, okay. But she kept calling that phone. I'm talking about she was furious, mad. That's the first time I ever saw her like that. Mad.
More recently, Ashley says Nicole had made a connection with an older man she met online.
I told them that she was talking about this old man that she had just met.
She didn't tell me his name either, but I know she was planning on meeting him in person.
The old man should message him only on Facebook. She'd sit in the dining room, set her phone on the charger, message him.
To investigators, it sounds like a potential lead.
Now, the police are concerned because we know that social media, Facebook, well, that's breeding ground for predators. So they're wondering, did she meet up with the wrong guy?
To detectives' surprise, Ashley says this wouldn't be the first time Nicole has fallen prey to a predatory man.
She done got raped at a bus stop before.
It was a little over a year ago.
On August 17th, 2015, Nicole was at a bus stop around 7:30 in the morning in front of her transitional housing.
She felt something hit her in the head. And when she woke up, she was in the alley and she had been raped.
She called me the morning that it happened and she was crying. I said, Nicole, go to the hospital. And so she went and she did go get the rape kit done.
Nicole is not able to really give a good description of the person who assaulted her. But what police are able to determine is that this person left semen.
That DNA sample was sent to the state crime lab for processing. But more than a year later, Nicole's attacker still hadn't been identified.
It's not uncommon for states to have a long backlog of untested rape kits. And at the time of Nicole's disappearance, her rape kit still had not been processed.
After speaking with Ashley, investigators contact the state crime lab to request a rush on Nicole's rape kit.
Whoever this individual was that raped Nicole could also be involved in her disappearance.
Detectives also file a subpoena for Nicole's cell phone records, and one number immediately stands out to them.
Once we received the data from the phone company, we were able to see that there were 77 telephone calls placed between Robert Autry and Nicole Smith.
Could Robert Autry and Robert Johnson be the same person?
Not only have they had contact via phone, but also on Facebook.
This began to form a picture in our minds. Based on my line of work, there can't be too many coincidences.
They're anxious to find this Robert Autry. Does he know where Nicole is?
Thanks to Nicole Smith's cell phone records, Detroit police have just identified a person of interest in the 33-year-old mother's disappearance.
She had been in near constant contact with this individual, this Robert Autry, in the days leading up to her disappearance.
Now the question is, who is Robert Autry? They wonder if maybe this Robert Autry is Robert Johnson, the Good Samaritan who dropped off her youngest child at the fire department.
Phone records show that Robert Autry last called Nicole on December 11th, one day before Isaiah was turned over to firefighters.
After December the 11th, he hadn't placed any more calls to Nicole. That's not normal.
Investigators uncover more troubling information when they start digging into Robert Autry's past.
While he was a high school student in 2003, he actually assaulted another student.
He's 16 years old, and he is accused of assaulting a mentally challenged girl.
He lured her into an abandoned building and raped her.
Ultimately, he's prosecuted, he does a plea deal, but because he's a juvenile, he doesn't receive any substantial sentence, but he is put on the sex offenders list.
Unfortunately, though, that wasn't enough to teach Robert a lesson.
But it doesn't stop there. What the police also learned is that in 2011, Robert Autry assaults another woman. This young lady is recovering from drug addiction. She's at home one night. She says that someone breaks in, comes through the window, and he proceeds to assault and rape her.
Eventually, that DNA comes back as Robert Autry.
It began to look like this guy is a predator.
Records show that law enforcement tried to prosecute Robert again, this time as an adult. But the case fell apart when the victim refused to cooperate.
There are many reasons why someone may choose not to go forward. You know, it's traumatic.
So what that meant was that Robert walked away scot-free.
The striking similarities between the alleged rape in 2011 and Nicole's 2015 bus stop assault aren't lost on police.
This is clearly a guy who was targeting vulnerable women.
And when detectives send Robert Autry's 2011 mugshot to the firemen who helped Isaiah to safety, it's a match.
They were able to confirm, yes, this is the man who dropped off Isaiah. It's the same guy who claimed he was Robert Johnson.
Now that his true identity is confirmed, detectives hope they'll have an easier time tracking down their number one suspect.
The police are looking for Robert. They're questioning people in the community.
They subpoenaed his phone records, and at the same time, they continued to reach out to Nicole's circle of family and friends.
When police speak to Nicole's best friend, Melanie, she says Nicole recently told her about a new man she was seeing, a man detectives now suspect is Robert Autry.
She was always either talking about him or talking to him on the phone. He had a hook, line, and sinker.
She just kept saying, my boyfriend, my boyfriend, my boyfriend. And I'm like, okay, I need to meet this boyfriend. And she said, you will meet him.
Only Melanie says that never happened. Instead, Nicole's new man seemed to intentionally keep his distance.
She had Robert come over to my house to pick her up one day. And it was kind of peculiar how he would not come to my door and he parked backwards where I couldn't see his face.
It was weird.
Melanie says in the days ahead, Nicole also started exhibiting strange behaviors with money.
She had asked me for about $200. And I said, why? She said, well, I got to pay my rent at the shelter. I said, you already paid it. She said, well, I was behind. I said, okay. So I gave her the $200. And then a couple of days later, she called me and said, well, I need probably like $50. And she gave me another excuse.
I think she was just doing what he told her to do.
That wasn't like Nicole, because Nicole always paid her rent and she always paid her bills.
Nicole received Social Security benefits, so she received money every month. She received a bridge card.
This was a government assistance card that Nicole used to buy food.
Well, thank you for coming in.
Detectives decide to follow the financial breadcrumbs by filing a subpoena for Nicole's financial records.
All of her financial, dealings had stopped when she disappeared, except authorities find that her bridge card is still in use.
Someone is taking Nicole's bridge card and using it at gas stations and other convenience stores within the area.
They know it was used at a supermarket and a liquor store. They're able to pull surveillance from those stores.
I started watching the video.
Wait. Stop there. Freeze that frame.
And there he is. It's Robert Autry.
In Detroit, Michigan, 30-year-old Robert Autry has emerged as the prime suspect in Nicole Smith's disappearance after being caught on camera using her stolen food stamps card.
We find Robert Autry taking Nicole's bridge card and using it at gas stations and other convenience stores within the area.
With a bolo out on Robert, detectives circulate his photo among Nicole's family members. And Nicole's cousin Ashley immediately recognizes him.
Like one day I went to the store with her. She wanted to walk by herself. I said, no, I'm going to go with you. And that was the first time I ever saw the man. Hey, how you doing? I'm her cousin, you know.
Hey.
Hey, what's up?
Great.
I'm great. Hey, so did you get that message I sent you?
Yeah, I had it.
At the time, Ashley didn't realize this was the same man her cousin had been talking to on the phone for weeks.
She got him some money or whatever. Then he gave her a hug and then he walked back.
What did you just give him? $200. Are you serious? It's not that serious. He said he needed
your money.
I don't want to talk about it. Just let it go.
I just felt like it wasn't right. I don't feel like he liked her. I felt like he was using her.
It became apparent that he was targeting her, so to speak.
And when investigators get their hands on Robert's phone records, they uncover another bombshell. Nicole wasn't the only woman in Robert's life.
His current girlfriend was living in that same transitional home that Nicole Smith was currently living at. He was essentially siphoning what Nicole was given to care for herself and her son, for his girlfriend, and for their children.
The investigators now have enough evidence to secure an arrest warrant for Robert, but they still have to find him.
Days go by without any leads on Robert's whereabouts. Until December 19th, when Nicole has been missing a full week.
They get a call from an anonymous person who tells them that Robert Autry is staying at an apartment building in the area.
As he's leaving, they've taken him into custody. And lo and behold, what does he have in his pocket? Nicole's bridge card.
Robert Autry was brought to Detroit Police Headquarters. There, myself and Officer James McDonald conducted an interrogation of Mr. Autry.
Robert, I'm not going to beat around the bush with you here. We're concerned about Nicole's well-being, and her phone records indicate that you two did talk. So what?
Robert Autry denies having any kind of real relationship with Nicole other than a friendship.
So you two weren't in a romantic relationship?
Mr. Autry claims that he did not see Nicole on December the 11th.
But as investigators lay out the evidence, Robert starts to sweat.
He knew it didn't look good if he was the last one to see her.
We have two witnesses who can positively ID you as the man who dropped off Isaiah at the fire department.
When confronted with the truth, Mr. Autry had to change his story.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did see her that day.
He admits that she had called him for a ride.
He says to police that, look, he went to pick up Nicole from her grandfather's house to take her back to her transitional housing, that when he gets there, he drops her off.
It's a story the investigators are easily able to poke holes in.
So if you dropped off Nicole, why did you take her son to the fire department? And what's with the fake name?
Why does it matter?
To say the least, this interview conducted with Robert Autry was filled with lies, inconsistencies, information that he could not explain. When confronted, he would just provide an answer that frankly didn't make sense.
What were you doing with Nicole's bridge card?
I was borrowing it.
He said that she gave him the bridge card and that he had permission to use it, and he used it with her consent.
Robert, where's Nicole? Her family deserves to know the truth.
I didn't do nothing to her.
He's adamant that he had nothing to do with it. He dropped her off and he went about his business.
But detectives are convinced that isn't true.
Plainly put, Mr. Autry was lying.
They are convinced Robert Autry knows something about Nicole's disappearance. Unfortunately, though, they can't prove it.
This is such a difficult spot for investigators to be in. Everything's circumstantial.
When you don't have a body, when you don't have a person, it's very difficult to convict. It's very difficult to bring charges.
And so they need more evidence.
Without any proof connecting Robert to Nicole's disappearance, police are forced to release him. When the news reaches Nicole's family, they're stunned.
I understood if you don't have enough evidence, but that was a hard situation.
I was mad, you know.
Where's Nicole? That, for me, was the goal.
But the more time that passes, the harder it is to believe Nicole will ever be found.
I used to get off work and go searching for her on my own, going through railroad tracks, going under bridges, going to abandoned houses.
We were looking everywhere. We were just trying to figure out, where was she at?
Days go by. Days turns into weeks. Weeks turn into months.
Finally, in December of 2018, when Nicole has been missing a full 2 years, there's a new development that reignites the investigation.
Police get a big break in Nicole's case.
Mr. Autry had found himself arrested on an unrelated matter.
Robert Autry tells prosecutors, "Give me a plea deal and I will give you new information about Nicole."
He says, "I can tell you where her body is."
Two years after Nicole Smith went missing, Detroit investigators' number one suspect in her disappearance has just been arrested on an unrelated case.
It's December 2018, and Robert Autry is arrested on another assaultive case.
He is once again accused of rape, and he's facing a life sentence.
He realizes this is a case he can't beat, and so he's very afraid about spending the rest of his life in prison.
In hopes of avoiding a life sentence, Robert reaches out to prosecutors.
Mr. Autry offers the information that, I can tell you where Nicole is.
Nicole's poor family has been waiting for answers for 2 years. And now Robert Autry, when faced with a life sentence, tells prosecutors, "Give me a plea deal, give me a lighter sentence, and I will give you new information about Nicole."
And so they do. They make a plea deal with him.
He is able to plead to a reduced second-degree murder.
Mr. Autry provided exact information as to where Nicole could be found.
The location is an abandoned apartment building in West Detroit.
Members of the Detroit Police Department responded to the area in which he had indicated.
They go inside and head to the basement. They find under a bunch of garbage a big black bag.
We made the unfortunate discovery, the remains of Nicole Smith.
Oh my God.
Obviously, at this point, the body is very badly decomposed.
It's a difficult scene to stomach, even for seasoned law enforcement officers.
To find her dead just sickened me. The state of disrepair and just the garbage everywhere the dampness, the gloom of just this building. You know, how dare you?
The medical examiners ruled Nicole's cause of death to be strangulation.
To add insult to injury, Nicole's body was just a few blocks away from her family all this time.
She's right, like 8 blocks from my house. I done passed this building, and she's right here at the building I done passed every day. That's crazy.
8 blocks. I was crying. Like, my cousin gone.
I remember Granddaddy Greenlee calling me. He said they found Nicole's body. I remember screaming.
Apart from Nicole's location, Robert refuses to give up any more details of the crime. But even without a full confession, investigators are able to form a theory of how Nicole died.
Robert Autry obviously is someone who's addicted to power, control. He's looking for people that he can assault who are vulnerable. He's purposely targeting those with mental and physical disabilities.
Robert Autry was taking money from Nicole. He used her.
The authorities suspect that Nicole had begun to catch on to Robert's scheme.
You don't want to even answer her calls, and so after so long, a woman gonna get fed up, and she gonna cut you off.
Maybe the last conversation Nicole had with her grandfather was alluding to this potential confrontation. Maybe she was finally going to cut Robert out of her life.
Based on Robert's own statement, investigators believe he picked Nicole up from her grandfather's house on the afternoon of December 12th, 2016.
Hey, so, you got that money I asked for?
No, I'm not giving you any more money.
What you mean?
You already took all my money. Get a job.
Nicole, she's real feisty. So he might have said something to her in the car, and she gonna smack back.
She's decided to walk away, to stand up for herself, and to not deal with this abusive relationship.
She must have got right back at him with something he said. Maybe he just flipped out.
Go be a man.
Overcome with rage, detectives speculate that Robert wrapped his hands around Nicole's throat.
What? He asked me. What happened here?
He chokes her to death, and it all happens in front of Isaiah.
He's a monster. How could you take somebody's life in front of their child?
Once Nicole was dead, Robert realized he had to get rid of her body.
Now he has to cover his tracks. And so he takes Isaiah to the fire department. He takes her remains. He puts it into the basement of this apartment building.
To find her in this grave, in this tomb of a building, this is something that undoubtedly will remain with me for the rest of my life.
But before Robert is sentenced for his crimes, a new piece of evidence emerges that casts his actions in an even more despicable light.
A year before Nicole was murdered, she had been raped by an unknown assailant. That rape kit was eventually processed by the Michigan State Lab.
There was his semen in that rape kit.
I don't believe Nicole knew that Robert was the one who raped her.
He raped her before, and you still sought her out.
The fact that this man victimized her twice is so disgusting. He's pure evil.
On January 15th, 2019, Robert is sentenced to 15 to 30 years in prison as part of his plea deal.
He deserved what he got. He deserved more than what he got.
I just felt like, no, that's not enough. That's not enough time.
The way you tortured her, I feel like you should go through the same torture.
Robert is never charged in connection with Nicole's 2015 sexual assault.
That was very, very, very sickening to me. That they was only giving him charged with her murder, not the rape, because they couldn't detect it until after she was missing.
To honor Nicole, that same month, her friends and family hold a vigil at the abandoned building where her body was found.
We got the visual together because we wanted her soul to rest. And a lot of people turned out. And it felt good. It felt so good.
I was happy and I was sad at the same time. I was happy that we was able to close that chapter. I was sad because That was my best friend.
We couldn't let that building stay there. My dad worked very hard on getting that building torn out.
We was praising the Lord. The very joyous time. We were all happy to see the building go.
Today, Nicole's son Isaiah is being raised by her cousin Shannon.
He's doing real good in school. He's bright. He's happy.
Her other 3 kids stayed with their father's family.
I wish she was here. I wish she was here to say I love you one more time, because I never got a chance to tell her I love her before she left.
Sexual assault is never okay. If you or someone you love has experienced sexual assault, there is help available. Call the National Sexual Assault Hotline at 1-800-656-HOPE.
Nisha had attacked him with a knife and that. He had acted in self-defense, blacking out during the struggle. When cross-examined about his actions following her death, he admitted to dismembering her remains and placing them in a smoker to destroy the evidence. This revelation solidified the jury's decision. Timothy Shepard was found guilty of murder and received the maximum sentence of 99 years in prison, ensuring he would no longer pose a danger to others while providing a somber sense of closure to a family that had endured unimaginable grief. Part 2. The Tangled Web of Obsession. The study of homicide investigations frequently reveals that the most violent acts are often committed by individuals driven by deeply personal, internal conflicts. On the cold winter morning of Wednesday, January 30th, 2008, at approximately 7:30 in the morning, motorists traveling along Interstate 540 in Raleigh, North Carolina, noticed what appeared to be a person lying in the grass beside the highway. Emergency personnel quickly arrived and confirmed that the young woman was deceased. The initial assumption that she might have been a pedestrian involved in a vehicular accident was rapidly dismissed when investigators observed that she had suffered multiple sharp force injuries to her face, neck, and torso. Among the commuters traveling on the interstate that morning was Darren Curtis. Observing the active crime scene and the blue tarp covering the victim, Darren continued his drive only to discover his wife's white sedan parked on the shoulder of the highway approximately half a mile further down the road. Filled with sudden apprehension, he returned to the scene, where law enforcement officers eventually confirmed his worst fears. The deceased young woman was his 21-year-old wife, Latrice Curtis, a dedicated business administration student at North Carolina Central University. The medical examiner's report detailed the extreme violence of the assault, noting that Latrice had been stabbed upwards of 40 times. Her carotid artery and jugular vein had been severed, and she had sustained numerous defensive injuries to her hands, indicating that she had struggled courageously against her attacker. The presence of her personal jewelry ruled out robbery as a primary motive. Instead, the sheer number of wounds pointed to an intense personal anger on the part of the perpetrator. A crucial piece of physical evidence was recovered during the post-mortem examination, a contraceptive device that indicated recent intimate activity, though there were no physical signs of involuntary sexual assault. To understand the circumstances surrounding her death, detectives subpoenaed the telephone records of both Latrice and Darren. The records confirmed Darren's account of his communications with his wife on the evening of January 29th, 2008. He explained that she had called him around 10 o'clock in the evening to state she was running late from her studies and planned to get some food. Darren had fallen asleep around 11:30 in the evening, assuming she had decided to stay at her parents' house and had tried to contact her the following morning before leaving for work at 7:30. However, the telephone records also revealed a significant number of calls exchanged between Latrice's phone and an unfamiliar number around midnight. This number was traced to Stephen Randolph, a prominent student and basketball player at the university who harbored aspirations of playing in the National Basketball Association. Within 2 days of the discovery of Latrice's body, Stephen voluntarily came to the sheriff's office to speak with investigators, accompanied by his housemate, Robert Reeves, a local pastor and influential community figure often referred to as the bishop. During his initial interview, Stephen claimed that his relationship with Latrice was strictly academic. However, when confronted with the forensic findings and telephone logs, he admitted that they had engaged in a secret sexual relationship. He explained that on the night of the murder, Latrice had visited his residence, and during their encounter, a contraceptive device had become dislodged. Unable to retrieve it, Latrice had left around 10 o'clock in the evening, planning to address the issue at home. Stephen stated that he had subsequently driven to the home of his primary girlfriend, Velma Newton, where he remained until approximately 1 o'clock in the morning. He claimed that Latrice had repeatedly called him during this time, expressing anxiety over a potential pregnancy. To verify these statements, detectives interviewed Pastor Robert Reeves, who lived in the same residence as Stephen. The 43-year-old minister confirmed that Latrice had visited Stephen that evening and that he had seen her car outside before leaving for a church service at 8:15 in the evening. He stated that when he returned at 11:30 in the evening, both vehicles were gone. Reeves also mentioned that Stephen had later confided in him about Latrice's late-night phone call, during which she reportedly expressed a desire to elevate their relationship, a prospect that Stephen apparently did not welcome due to his focus on his athletic career. As investigators sought to verify these timelines, they received a critical report from a state trooper who had been patrolling Interstate 540 on the night of the crime. At approximately 1:30 in the morning, the trooper had observed a disabled vehicle with its hazard lights flashing on the eastbound shoulder. Upon running the registration plates, the vehicle was found to belong to Pastor Robert Reeves. The trooper had also noticed a white sedan matching Latrice's vehicle parked on the westbound shoulder opposite the pastor's car, but had been called away to another incident before he could investigate further. This discovery shifted the focus of the investigation toward the pastor. When re-interviewed, Reeves denied having driven his vehicle that night, suggesting instead that Stephen might have borrowed it. However, Stephen denied this, and his girlfriend confirmed that Stephen had been at her residence during the key hours. Furthermore, investigators noticed deep scratches and abrasions on Reeves' arms and hands, which the pastor claimed were the result of an accident while moving a desk with Stephen. Stephen, however, had no recollection of any such accident. As detectives delved deeper into the pastor's background, they uncovered a complex and troubled personal history that contrasted sharply with his public persona. Telephone records revealed that Reeves had been making numerous blocked, anonymous phone calls to Stephen and Velma, attempting to disrupt their relationship. It became increasingly evident that Reeves harbored an intense, possessive obsession with his young roommate and had previously made unwanted sexual advances toward him, which Stephen had rejected. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when the results of the genetic analysis were returned from the crime lab. While Stephen's genetic material was found under Latrice's fingernails, which the prosecution attributed to their intimate encounter earlier that evening, the steering wheel of Latrice's abandoned vehicle contained a mixture of genetic material that belonged directly to Pastor Robert Reeves. On February 2nd, 2008, Robert Reeves was formally arrested and charged with first-degree murder. During his trial in September of 2009, the prosecution presented a compelling case detailing how the pastor's obsessive jealousy towards Stephen had driven him to target Latrice. The prosecution argued that Reeves had followed Latrice from the residence, forced her to pull over on the dark highway, and killed her in a desperate, irrational belief that removing her from Stephen's life would somehow make Stephen more receptive to his own advances. The defense attempted to argue that the genetic material found in the car was the result of passive transfer from the shared residence, and suggested that Stephen had a stronger motive to commit the crime to protect his career from an unwanted pregnancy. However, the jury found the combination of the state trooper's sighting of the pastor's car, the scratches on his arms, his false alibi, and the direct physical evidence to be overwhelming. After 2 days of deliberation on October 9th, 2009, Robert Reeves was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, exposing the tragic consequences of a destructive obsession. Part 3. The fragmented memory of a fatal conflict. The human mind possesses complex mechanisms to cope with extreme trauma, sometimes blocking out the very memories of events that are too devastating to process. On December 11th, 2004, shortly after 4 o'clock in the morning, a hotel manager in Gainesville, Texas, responded to an urgent request from a guest's room. Upon entering the locked room with the assistance of maintenance staff, they discovered a woman lying on the floor in a severely disoriented and injured state. She had sustained a gunshot wound to her head, and a .25 caliber handgun lay near her on the floor. Emergency. Medical technicians rushed her to a trauma center where she survived her life-threatening injuries, but was left with permanent physical and cognitive impairments. The injured woman was identified as Denise Miller, who, along with her boyfriend, police officer Wayne Irby, had been reported missing from the nearby town of Little Elm, Texas, just 24 hours earlier.
Wayne A.,
37-year-old, 6-year veteran of the Little Elm Police Department, had failed to report for his scheduled 6 o'clock in the morning shift on December 10th, 2004, immediately raising alarms among his colleagues who knew him to be exceptionally punctual and dedicated to his duties. A welfare check at the residence Denise shared with her 2 teenage children revealed that neither adult had been seen since the previous day. Denise's daughter recalled receiving a brief, unusual phone call from her mother around midnight, in which Denise expressed her love and instructed her children to prepare themselves for school the next morning. Concerned for their colleagues' safety, 2 officers visited a rental home that Wayne had recently maintained. During a brief separation from Denise, upon entering the residence, they discovered Wayne's mobile phone and personal bag on the kitchen counter, and further down the hallway, they found Wayne deceased on the floor, having sustained a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. The initial investigation focused on determining whether Wayne's death was related to his work as a police officer, but his colleagues described him as an exceptionally popular and friendly individual who lacked professional enemies. However, as detectives interviewed friends and acquaintances, they uncovered a history of significant trust issues and jealousy within the couple's relationship. Denise had frequently accused Wayne of infidelity, a tension that had previously resulted in a physical altercation in December of 2003, which led to a brief separation, although they had reconciled in November of 2004 after Denise lost her employment. Friends indicated that Wayne had recently decided to end the relationship permanently, planning to move out of their shared home. Inside the couple's primary residence, investigators discovered a handwritten note from Denise expressing deep despair on the kitchen counter of Wayne's rental home. They found another note in which Denise apologized for taking both of their lives and requested that their families be contacted in her hotel room. In Gainesville, investigators discovered a third, more extensive letter, which contained a line suggesting that she had accidentally shot Wayne, panicked, and fled the scene. They also found Wayne's .40 caliber service weapon, which Denise had apparently tried to load with a cartridge inserted backward, causing the weapon to jam and prompting her to use the .25 caliber handgun instead. When a Texas Ranger interviewed Denise at her hospital bedside, she exhibited severe cognitive deficits, claiming to have no memory of the shooting or her subsequent suicide attempt. Neurological experts note that the physical trauma of a bullet wound to the brain, combined with the psychological impact of a highly distressing event, can result in genuine amnesia, leaving the individual unable to recall the critical moments of the incident. Despite her memory loss and physical limitations, including partial paralysis and visual impairment, Denise was charged with first-degree murder. Her trial commenced in July of 2006. The defense faced the significant task of explaining her actions, arguing that the shooting had been a tragic accident, highlighting the line in her hotel note, and suggesting that her lack of intent was evidenced by her highly distressed state. However, the prosecution presented forensic evidence from the state crime lab demonstrating that the .25 caliber handgun required 4.5 to 5 pounds of pressure to pull the trigger, making an accidental discharge highly improbable. Furthermore, the fact that Wayne had been shot in the back of the head and that Denise had failed to summon medical assistance, choosing instead to flee and write notes, strongly supported the prosecution's argument of a deliberate act born of jealousy. The jury rejected the theory of an accident, finding Denise guilty of murder. While some observers wondered if her physical disability would elicit leniency. During the sentencing phase, the jury sentenced her to 62 years in prison, reflecting the gravity of the loss of Officer Wayne Irby. Conclusion: when we reflect on these three cases, we are reminded of the profound impact of domestic conflict and personal obsession on families and communities. The meticulous work of the investigators, forensic scientists, and legal professionals who resolved these complex cases highlights the enduring pursuit of justice. By analyzing the psychological vulnerabilities that lead to such tragic outcomes, we gain a deeper understanding of the importance of community awareness, support networks, and early intervention in domestic relationships, ensuring that the memory of those lost continues to inspire the triumph of good over evil. The human mind is a complex labyrinth, often balancing between deep affection and a dangerous desire for control. In the study of criminal psychology, we frequently observe that the most tragic acts of violence do not originate from external threats, but from within the very relationships that promise safety and devotion. When the fragile boundaries of love are replaced by possessiveness, jealousy, or a desperate need to maintain a false self-image, the consequences can be devastating. Through the careful examination of three distinct cases, we can observe how dedicated investigators, forensic specialists, and community members work together to uncover the truth behind sudden disappearances and senseless acts of violence. By analyzing these events through a psychological lens, we gain a deeper understanding of the warning signs of obsessive behavior and the enduring power of justice. The case of Tanisha Stewart and Timothy Shepard. In the spring of 2007, a sense of quiet dread settled over a neighborhood north of Houston, Texas. On Wednesday, March 21st of that year, investigator Sidney Miller and his partner drove down a highway, guided by two passengers in the back seat of their vehicle. The passengers were directing the detectives to an apartment complex, hoping to find some trace of a 19-year-old college freshman named Tanisha Stewart, who had been missing since March 15th. Upon arriving at the designated parking lot, one of the passengers pointed toward a large dumpster in the back of the complex. Fearing what they might find, the investigators peered inside, only to find the container completely empty. There were no obvious human remains, no immediate clues, and no clear answers. It was a frustrating moment in an investigation that was rapidly turning into a complex puzzle of betrayal, jealousy, and hidden anger. To understand how a young woman with a promising future could vanish so suddenly, investigators had to look back at her life and her relationships. Tanisha Stewart was known by her family and friends as someone exceptional. Raised in one of the more challenging neighborhoods of Houston, she had experienced hardship early in life, including the loss of her father at a young age. Despite these difficulties, she remained focused on her education, devoting herself to her studies and earning a scholarship to Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University. Tanisha was described as a bright, personable young woman with an infectious smile, which naturally drew people to her. In May 2005, while working at a local pizza restaurant, she met Timothy Shepard, a coworker who was 25 years old at the time. Despite an 8-year age difference, 17-year-old Tanisha was drawn to Timothy, who presented himself as someone mature and supportive. Over time, their working relationship transitioned into a serious romance. Tanisha's family initially questioned Timothy's motives, wondering why an older man was dating a teenage girl. To ease their concerns, Timothy made a conscious effort to win over her relatives. He spent time at her mother's home, offered to fix appliances, and assisted with computers, eventually earning their trust and being embraced like a member of the family. The dynamics of the relationship began to shift, however, when Tanisha left Houston to attend university. The physical distance of nearly 2 hours created a natural separation, allowing Tanisha to experience a new level of personal independence. For Timothy, this transition appeared to trigger deep-seated insecurities. Approximately 3 months into her first semester, Timothy briefly ended the relationship to reconcile with a former girlfriend, only to realize he had made what he considered a mistake. He traveled to the university campus to surprise Tanisha, and they resumed dating. But the relationship was no longer the same. Tanisha was growing, meeting new people, and focusing on her future, while Timothy's behavior became increasingly possessive. Psychological analysis of such dynamics often reveals that when one partner gains independence, the controlling partner may perceive this growth as a direct threat to their authority and self-worth. When Tanisha returned home for spring break in March 2007, she planned to spend time with her friends and attend a concert. Timothy's frustration with her independence became evident when he questioned why she was setting up appointments just to see him. Her sister, Gayla Taylor, recalled having a troubling premonition during this time, a nightmare that her sister was in danger, though Tanisha gently reassured her that everything would be fine. On Sunday, March 18, 2007, Gayla received a phone call from her mother, who was deeply concerned because no one had heard from Tanisha. She had failed to attend the concert she was looking forward to, and her mobile phone went unanswered. As 36 hours passed without any word, the family filed a missing persons report on Monday, March 19th. Investigators quickly identified Timothy Shepard as one of the last people to see Tanisha alive and invited him to the police station for questioning. Timothy claimed that he had picked Tanisha up early on Thursday morning, around 3 o'clock. According to his account, while they were in his vehicle, Tanisha received an early morning telephone call from a college friend named Mark Marks. Timothy admitted this call upset him, and when they arrived at his apartment, a confrontation ensued. Timothy told detectives that Tanisha refused to discuss the call and walked out of his apartment later that morning, leaving on foot. He maintained that he had no idea where she went, although investigators questioned him extensively. Timothy did not deviate from his story. He even provided voluntary written consent for the police to search his apartment. The initial search of the apartment did not yield any immediate physical evidence of a struggle or a crime. With no legal grounds to detain him, investigators returned his keys and allowed him to leave, while they turned their attention to other possibilities, including Mark Marks. When detectives interviewed Mark, they learned that he and Tanisha had been dating for about a month. Mark was aware of Timothy, and though he disliked sharing Tanisha's affection, he understood she was still trying to resolve her past relationship. Mark stated that he had last seen Tanisha around 3 o'clock on Thursday morning when he dropped her off. He denied any involvement in her disappearance and provided a verified alibi, proving he was at a social gathering with friends on South Padre Island at the time she vanished. With both Timothy and Mark seemingly cleared, investigators faced the distressing possibility that Tanisha had been abducted by a stranger after leaving Timothy's apartment. Search teams, K-9 units, and community volunteers combed the wooded areas near the complex, but found no traces of her. However, as the search continued, neighbors at the apartment complex began reporting highly unusual behavior from Timothy Shepard. Several residents noted that on the Friday following Tanisha's disappearance, Timothy spent the entire weekend continuously operating 2 outdoor grills. The smoke was so intense that neighbors had called the emergency services, fearing a fire. When first responders arrived, Timothy claimed he was preparing food for an upcoming church picnic of approximately 150 to 200 people. Firefighters noted seeing what appeared to be raw meat in a bathtub filled with water, which seemed consistent with his explanation. Additionally, a neighbor reported seeing Timothy pouring an excessive amount of bleach on his patio, so strong that the fumes burned her eyes. This combination of suspicious behaviors caused investigators to reevaluate Timothy as a primary suspect. The physical evidence of extensive cleaning and the intense, continuous use of the grill suggested a desperate attempt to destroy evidence. As pressure mounted, Tanisha's family reached out to community activist Quan Nell X to assist in finding answers. Quan Nell X, who had been contacted by Timothy's family to ensure a fair interaction with law enforcement, arranged a private meeting with Timothy at his apartment. During their conversation, which took place in the bathroom due to Timothy's paranoia about surveillance. The emotional weight of the situation became apparent when asked directly if he had harmed Tanisha. Timothy's demeanor changed. He confessed to Quanell X that during their argument about Marks, he had entered a rage, attacked Tanisha as she attempted to leave, and strangled her to death. He claimed he then placed her body in the apartment complex dumpster. Quanell X immediately communicated this confession to investigator Sidney Miller. However, when authorities arrived at the dumpster, they discovered it had been emptied. The waste had already been transported to a massive regional landfill. Investigators estimated that a thorough search of the landfill would cost over $500,000 and offer a very low probability of success. In a painful decision, Tanisha's family requested that the county not exhaust its resources on a potentially futile search. Following his arrest, Timothy exercised his right to legal counsel and refused to speak further. To secure a conviction without a body, investigators needed physical evidence. A specialized forensic team conducted a meticulous search of Timothy's apartment. Inside the kitchen garbage disposal, crime scene investigators discovered microscopic bone fragments and a small piece of tooth enamel, which was later matched to Tanisha. Near the outdoor grill, they also recovered charred bone fragments. While the charred pieces were too degraded for a definitive identification, the presence of the tooth enamel in the disposal provided a powerful piece of forensic evidence. The state presented its case in September 2008. The prosecution argued that Timothy, driven by a desire for control and unable to accept Tanisha's growing independence, had taken her life and attempted to destroy the evidence of his crime using the apartment appliances and outdoor grills to demonstrate premeditation and a history of controlling behavior. The prosecution called Timothy's cousin, Nicholas Shepard, to the stand. Nicholas testified that Timothy had previously threatened that if Tanisha ever left him, he would dismember her and boil her remains. This testimony shocked the courtroom and provided critical insight into the suspect's mindset. During the sentencing phase, Timothy chose to testify, claiming he had acted in self-defense. He asserted that Tanisha had attacked him with a knife and that he had blacked out during the struggle, remembering nothing until he realized she was no longer breathing. To support this claim, the defense presented photographs of minor cuts on Timothy's hands from the night of his arrest. However, the prosecution challenged this narrative by questioning Timothy about his actions after her death. When asked if he had placed her remains on a barbecue pit, Timothy corrected the prosecutor, stating he had used a smoker. This clinical, detached response deeply affected the jury. The jury rejected the claim of self-defense, upholding the guilty verdict for murder. Timothy Shepard was sentenced to 99 years in prison, ensuring he would no longer pose a threat to others. For Tanisha's family, the sentence offered a solemn resolution to a tragic chapter, allowing them to honor her memory and her legacy of academic ambition. The case of Latrice Curtis and Robert Reeves. In the early morning of Wednesday, January 30th, 2008, commuters traveling along Interstate 540 in Raleigh, North Carolina, made a tragic discovery. Alongside the busy highway lay the body of a young woman. First responders quickly determined that she had not been the victim of a traffic accident. She had been stabbed repeatedly. The victim was identified as 21-year-old Latrice Curtis, a student at North Carolina Central University. Her husband, Darren Curtis, had passed the crime scene on his way to work and recognized her white vehicle parked half a mile down the road. Distraught, he returned to the scene, where detectives confirmed his fears. Latrice Curtis was described as a vibrant, popular young woman who valued her education and had a promising future in business administration. She had met Darren, an accounting student and former National Guard soldier, during her first semester of college. The two fell in love and were married in April 2007, moving into a cozy apartment to begin their lives together. The brutality of the crime scene suggested a deeply personal attack. Latrice had suffered upwards of 40 stab wounds to her face, neck, and torso. Forensic investigators noted that her hands showed defensive wounds, indicating she had fought desperately for her life. Inside her abandoned vehicle, investigators found signs of a struggle, including a broken center console and trace amounts of blood on the driver's side door. A DNA sample was recovered from the steering wheel, which was sent to the state crime lab for analysis. During initial questioning, Darren Curtis explained that he last spoke to his wife around 10 o'clock on the evening of January 29th. She had called to say she was running late from her classes and planned to get something to eat. Darren went to sleep around 11:30, assuming she might have decided to stay at her parents' house. When he woke the next morning, he tried calling her, but the calls went straight to voicemail. An examination of Darren's hands and arms showed no signs of physical conflict, and a search of his home and vehicle yielded no evidence linking him to the crime. However, the autopsy of Latrice Curtis revealed a significant piece of evidence. A condom was recovered from her body, showing no signs of physical trauma associated with a sexual assault. This suggested she had engaged in consensual sexual activity shortly before her death. To identify her recent contacts, investigators subpoenaed her mobile phone records. The logs revealed a flurry of late-night calls between Latrice and a number belonging to Stephen Randolph, a well-known student and basketball player at her university. On February 1st, 2008, Stephen Randolph arrived at the sheriff's office to speak with detectives. He was accompanied by his roommate, Robert Reeves, a prominent local pastor often referred to as the bishop in the community. Stephen initially stated that he and Latrice were merely classmates who occasionally studied together. However, when presented with the telephone records and the autopsy findings, Stephen admitted they were involved in a consensual affair. He explained that on the night of January 29th, Latrice had visited the basement apartment he rented from Pastor Reeves. During their encounter, a condom had become trapped, and they were unable to retrieve it. Latrice left his residence around 10 o'clock, planning to address the issue. At home, Stephen claimed that after she left, he drove to the home of his girlfriend, Velma Newton, where he stayed until approximately 1 o'clock in the morning. He stated that during this time, Latrice called him repeatedly, expressing concern about the trapped condom and the possibility of pregnancy. Stephen denied any involvement in her murder. To verify this timeline, investigators interviewed Pastor Robert Reeves. Reeves confirmed that Latrice had visited Stephen that evening. He stated that he had left the house at 8:15 to attend a church service and returned around 11:30, noting that both Stephen's and Latrice's vehicles were gone. Reeves also mentioned that Stephen had a collection of swords and knives in the home, which raised concerns for investigators given the nature of Latrice's injuries. A search of the residence, however, did not locate any weapons matching the forensic profile of the murder weapon. As detectives continued their investigation, they attempted to verify the alibis of those involved. When they interviewed Stephen's girlfriend, Velma Newton, she confirmed that Stephen had arrived at her apartment around 10 o'clock. She also shared that she and Stephen had recently been subjected to a series of anonymous, threatening phone calls demanding they end their relationship. Additionally, Stephen's car tires had recently been slashed. The breakthrough in the case came from a routine highway patrol report. State Trooper Isaac Cooper contacted detectives to report that at approximately 1:30 on the morning of January 30th, he had observed a disabled vehicle with its hazard lights on parked on the shoulder of Interstate 540 eastbound. Across the highway, on the westbound side, he noticed a white vehicle matching the description of Latrice's car. Before assisting the driver of the eastbound vehicle, Trooper Cooper ran the license plate through dispatch. The vehicle was registered to Pastor Robert Reeves. This discovery placed the pastor's car at the exact location where Latrice's body was found hours before she was discovered. Detectives brought Reeves back for further questioning. When asked why his car was on the highway that night, Reeves denied being there, insisting he had been at home asleep. However, investigators noticed visible scratches and abrasions on Reeves' hands and arms. He claimed he had received the injuries when he and Stephen fell while moving a heavy desk. When detectives asked Stephen about this incident, Stephen stated that no such fall had occurred. Investigators also subpoenaed the pastor's phone records, which revealed that the anonymous, threatening calls to Stephen and Velma had been placed from Reeves' phone using a blocking feature. Furthermore, when the pastor's sister was interviewed, she stated she had attended the church service Reeves claimed to be at, but did not see him there. The final piece of evidence came from the state crime lab. DNA analysis of the samples recovered from Latrice's steering wheel matched Robert Reeves. The psychological profile of Robert Reeves revealed a deeply compartmentalized life. While presenting himself as a respected spiritual leader, he harbored an intense, obsessive infatuation with his young roommate, Stephen. When Stephen engaged in relationships with women, Reeves responded with jealousy, attempting to sabotage those relationships through anonymous threats and vandalism. On the night of January 29th, after witnessing Latrice visit Stephen, Reeves' jealousy apparently escalated. Investigators believe he followed Latrice onto the highway, forced her to pull over, and attacked her in a state of obsessive rage. In September 2009, Robert Reeves stood trial for the murder of
Latrice Curtis.
The defense argued that Stephen Randolph was a more likely suspect, pointing to the presence of Stephen's DNA under Latrice's fingernails. The prosecution countered that this DNA was the result of their consensual contact earlier that evening, whereas the presence of Reeves' DNA on her steering wheel, combined with the trooper's eyewitness report and the physical injuries on his arms, left no reasonable doubt. On October 9, 2009, the jury found Robert Reeves guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The conviction of a trusted community figure left many in disbelief, but it served as a stark reminder of the hidden dangers of obsessive possessiveness. The case of Wayne Irby and Denise Miller. In the quiet early hours of Saturday, December 11, 2004, the night manager of a hotel in Gainesville, Texas, received a distress call from a guest room. Unable to open the locked door due to a deadbolt, the manager enlisted the help of a maintenance worker to force entry. Inside the darkened room, they found a 44-year-old woman lying on the floor, bleeding from an apparent gunshot wound to her head. Beside her lay a .25 caliber handgun, along with over-the-counter medication and alcohol. The woman, identified as Denise Miller, was conscious but disoriented. She was immediately transported to a regional trauma center in critical condition. The situation became significantly more complex when local authorities realized that Denise Miller and her boyfriend, 37-year-old police officer Wayne Irby, had been reported missing 24 hours earlier. Wayne Irby was a dedicated 6-year veteran of the Little Elm Police Department. On the morning of December 10th, he failed to report for his 6 o'clock shift, which was highly unusual behavior for him. His colleague, Officer Cynthia Medrano, grew concerned when he did not return her calls. Chief Waylon Rhodes dispatched officers to conduct a welfare check at the home. Wayne shared with Denise and her 2 children, Whitney and Walter. No one answered the door, and no vehicles were in the driveway. When investigators interviewed Denise's children, they learned that their mother had not returned home the previous night. Whitney recalled receiving a brief, unusual phone call from her mother around midnight, telling her she was running errands and expressing her love. Concerned for Wayne's safety, his partner, Detective Jerry Walker, and Officer James Wynn went to a rental property Wayne had recently leased across town.
The Pawn.
Entering the home, they found Wayne's personal items, including his mobile phone. and bag on the kitchen counter. In a back hallway, they discovered Wayne Irby. Lying on the floor, he had died from a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. There were no signs of a struggle or forced entry at the scene. Given Wayne's profession, investigators initially considered whether the homicide was work-related. However, his colleagues described him as an approachable, well-liked officer with no known professional adversaries. Attention quickly turned to Denise Miller. A search of the home she shared with Wayne revealed a handwritten note in the master bedroom expressing deep emotional distress and hinting at suicide. Additionally, Wayne's service weapon was missing from its holster. On the kitchen island of Wayne's rental home, investigators found a second note, written by Denise, which read, "I'm sorry I took both of our lives. Please contact our moms." This confession note suggested a planned murder-suicide. To understand the motive behind the tragedy, investigators looked into the couple's relationship history. They discovered a pattern of intense jealousy and instability. In December 2003, Denise had filed a domestic violence complaint against Wayne after finding him at his home with another female acquaintance. The confrontation had turned physical, resulting in minor injuries to both parties. Denise later withdrew the complaint, admitting she had exaggerated the details out of anger. Friends of the couple indicated that Denise struggled with trust issues, frequently calling Wayne's phone when he was on duty. Wayne had recently expressed a desire to end the relationship permanently and was planning to move back into his rental home. Following the discovery of Denise in the Gainesville hotel room, Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy attempted to interview her at the hospital. Denise had survived the gunshot wound but suffered significant cognitive impairment, partial paralysis, and blindness in one eye. During the recorded interview, Denise appeared highly disoriented and claimed to have no memory of the events in Little Elm or her own suicide attempt. When told that Wayne was deceased, she expressed genuine confusion and denial. Neurological experts noted that severe head trauma, combined with the ingestion of alcohol and medication, can result in genuine psychogenic or organic amnesia, where the brain blocks out traumatic memories as a defense mechanism. Despite her memory loss, physical evidence linked Denise to the crime. Ballistics testing confirmed that the bullet recovered from Wayne's had been fired from the .25 caliber handgun found beside Denise in the hotel room. The weapon was registered to her stepfather. Inside the hotel room, investigators also recovered Wayne's .40 caliber service pistol. It had jammed because a bullet had been inserted backward into the chamber, suggesting Denise had initially tried to use Wayne's weapon before turning her stepfather's gun on herself. A third, longer note found in the hotel room contained a line where Denise claimed the shooting of Wayne had been an accident, stating she had panicked and fled. On January 18, 2005, Denise Miller was formally charged with first-degree murder, following 18 months of medical rehabilitation and physical therapy. She was deemed competent to stand trial. The trial began on July 10, 2006. The defense argued that the shooting was a tragic accident, pointing to her final note as a dying declaration of intent. They suggested that if she had intended to kill Wayne, she would have loaded the weapon fully and fired multiple times. The prosecution countered by presenting forensic evidence regarding the weapon's mechanics. Testing showed that the .25 caliber handgun required approximately 4.5 to 5 pounds of pressure to pull the trigger, making an accidental discharge highly improbable. Furthermore, the single shot was delivered directly to the back of Wayne's head, and Denise's failure to call for medical assistance after the incident contradicted the claim of an accident. On July 12, 2006, the jury found Denise Miller guilty of murder at her sentencing hearing, taking into account her severe physical disabilities resulting from her suicide attempt. The court spared her the death penalty and sentenced her to 62 years in prison. Reflections on criminal psychology and justice. These three cases, though distinct in their locations and details, share common psychological undercurrents. They demonstrate how unresolved insecurities, obsessive jealousy, and the desire to control another individual can erode the moral boundaries that govern human behavior. In the case of Timothy Shepard, we see how an inability to accept a partner's growing independence led to a fatal escalation of violence, followed by a clinical attempt to evade detection. In the case of Robert Reeves, we observe how a deep, unrequited obsession with another person can manifest as externalized rage against anyone perceived as a barrier to that obsession. In the case of Denise Miller, we see the destructive path of pathological jealousy, where the fear of abandonment culminated in a tragic act of violence and a subsequent attempt to end her own life. In each instance, the resolution of these complex cases was made possible through the meticulous work of law enforcement officers, forensic scientists, and alert community members. By examining the physical evidence, verifying timelines, and analyzing behavioral patterns, investigators were able to present clear, logical narratives to the courts, ensuring that those responsible were held accountable. For the families of Tanisha Stewart, Latrice Curtis, and Wayne Irby, the legal outcomes provided a measure of justice, though the loss of their loved ones remains a permanent void. These narratives serve as an educational resource, encouraging communities to remain vigilant, to recognize the early warning signs of obsessive and controlling behavior, and to support the systems of justice that work to protect the vulnerable and honor the memory of the victims. The anatomy of toxic possessiveness and the illusion of control. The human mind is a complex landscape where love and obsession can sometimes become dangerously intertwined. In the realm of criminal psychology, one of the most critical challenges is understanding how relationships that begin with warmth and affection can devolve into control, violence, and tragedy. True. Justice is not merely about identifying the perpetrator and securing a conviction. It is also about honoring the memory of those whose lives were cut short, understanding the psychological undercurrents that led to their demise. and learning how communities can protect their vulnerable members. This analysis examines 3 distinct cases that occurred across the United States of America. Each case represents a different manifestation of toxic control, obsessive projection, and the devastating consequences of pathological jealousy. By looking beneath the surface of these tragedies, we can find the warning signs, understand the meticulous work of the investigators, and appreciate the triumph of justice over darkness. The illusion of ownership and the case of Tanisha Stewart. The city of Houston, Texas, is a sprawling metropolis known for its industry and diversity. Within its tougher neighborhoods, families work tirelessly to build better futures for their children. It was in this environment that Tanisha Stewart grew up. One of 6 children, Tanisha experienced adversity early in life, losing her father when she was very young. Despite the economic hardships and the challenging surroundings, she refused to let her circumstances define her. Tanisha was a remarkably bright, diligent, and focused young woman. She was blessed with a natural warmth, an infectious smile, and a determination that stood out to everyone who knew her. Her family recognized early on that she was destined for great achievements. She applied herself to her studies with absolute seriousness, earning a scholarship to Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University. For Tanisha, education was the pathway to a wider world, a way to lift herself and her family to new heights. At the age of 17, while working at a local pizza restaurant, Tanisha met Timothy Shepard, who was 25 years old at the time. Timothy was handsome, articulate, and presented himself as a supportive partner. Despite the 8-year age gap, Tanisha was drawn to him. She valued partners who could challenge her intellectually, and Timothy initially seemed to fit that description. As their relationship developed, Timothy spent significant time with Tanisha's family, helping with household tasks, fixing electronics, and presenting himself as a reliable, protective figure. The family welcomed him, treating him like a brother and a son. However, a fundamental shift occurred when Tanisha transitioned from high school to college. In the fall of 2006, she moved to the university campus, located approximately 2 hours away from Houston. For the first time, Tanisha was experiencing independence, meeting new friends, and expanding her horizons. This growth, which should have been celebrated, triggered a deep insecurity within Timothy. In the study of criminal psychology, this dynamic is frequently observed in possessive personalities. When a partner begins to gain autonomy, the controlling individual experiences a perceived loss of ownership. Timothy's behavior grew increasingly domineering. He would call and harass her, and on several occasions he even drove to the university campus, wandering through the grounds in an attempt to locate her when she did not answer his phone calls. Though the couple broke up briefly, they resumed dating, but the underlying tension remained. In March of 2007, Tanisha returned to Houston for her spring break. She spent time with friends, planning to attend a concert. Her family noticed that she was attempting to establish boundaries with Timothy, who grew increasingly frustrated by her independence. On Thursday, March 15th, 2007, Tanisha disappeared. The alarm was raised when Tanisha failed to attend the concert and did not respond to any attempts at contact. Her family, knowing her reliable nature, immediately sensed that something was wrong. Her sister, Gayla Taylor, had experienced a troubling dream days prior, which magnified her anxiety. After 36 hours of silence, the family filed a missing persons report on Monday, March 19th, 2007. Investigator Sidney Miller and his partner took charge of the case. They knew that in missing persons cases, the first 24 to 48 hours are the most critical. If a person is not located within that window, the probability of a tragic outcome increases significantly. The detectives began by interviewing the individuals who had last seen Tanisha. Among them was Timothy Shepard. When questioned at the police station, Timothy claimed that he had picked Tanisha up at approximately 3 a.m. on Thursday. He stated that while they were driving, she received a phone call from a college friend named Mark Marks. This call had upset Timothy, leading to a confrontation at his apartment. According to Timothy's initial account, Tanisha refused to discuss the matter and walked out of the apartment later that morning, leaving on foot. He claimed that was the last time he saw her. The investigators searched Timothy's apartment with his voluntary consent, but they found no immediate signs of a struggle or foul play. At that stage, they had no physical evidence to detain him, so they returned his keys and allowed him to leave. Detectives then turned their attention to Mark Marks, the 19-year-old college friend who had called Tanisha. Marks was cooperative, explaining that he and Tanisha had been dating for a short period. He stated that Tanisha was preparing to end her relationship with Timothy. Marks provided a solid, verified alibi, proving he was with friends at a holiday destination at the time of her disappearance. He was ruled out as a suspect. With their primary suspects seemingly in the clear, investigators faced the chilling possibility that Tanisha had been abducted by a stranger after leaving Timothy's apartment. They conducted extensive searches of the surrounding wooded areas, utilizing canine units. At one point, a canine unit locked onto a scent in the woods, but it proved to be the remains of a deceased animal, leaving the search at a standstill. Meanwhile, the community was actively mobilizing. Gayla Taylor organized volunteer search parties, knocking on doors and speaking with neighbors near Timothy's apartment complex. It was during these community inquiries that crucial pieces of information began to emerge. Multiple neighbors reported that on the Friday following Tanisha's disappearance, Timothy had been operating two barbecue grills continuously on his patio. The smoke had been so intense that neighbors had feared a fire and called the emergency services. Furthermore, another resident reported seeing Timothy pouring an extraordinary amount of bleach onto his patio, creating a scent so strong that it irritated the eyes of passersby. These behaviors were highly anomalous. It seemed inexplicable that a man whose girlfriend had just disappeared would focus his energy on an intense, multi-day outdoor cooking session rather than assisting in the search. When the fire department had responded to the smoke complaint, Timothy had claimed he was preparing food for a large church gathering. A firefighter recalled seeing what appeared to be raw meat soaking in a bathtub inside the apartment. Recognizing the gravity of these reports, Tanisha's family contacted Quannell X, a prominent community activist in Houston who often facilitated peaceful surrenders of individuals wanted by law enforcement. Interestingly, Timothy's family had also reached out to Quannell, claiming that Timothy was being unfairly targeted by investigators. Quannell X arranged to meet Timothy privately at his apartment. Timothy was visibly stressed, paranoid that the apartment might be monitored by authorities. He insisted that they talk in the bathroom. When Quannell looked him in the eyes and asked him directly if he had harmed Tanisha, the psychological weight of the crime became too heavy for Timothy to bear. Timothy confessed that when Tanisha refused to discuss her relationship with Mark Marks and attempted to leave the apartment, he flew into a jealous rage. He attacked her, strangling her to death. Timothy told Quannell that he had placed her body in the dumpster behind the apartment complex. Quannell immediately contacted investigator Sidney Miller. On Wednesday, March 21st, 2007, at 5:30 in the afternoon, the investigators, accompanied by Quannell and Timothy, drove to the apartment complex dumpster. To their horror, the dumpster was completely empty. It had been cleared by the sanitation service earlier that week. The realization was devastating. In a city of Houston's size, the contents of the dumpster had already been transported to a massive regional landfill. A search of the landfill would cover an area equivalent to multiple football fields, costing upwards of $500,000 with an extremely low probability of success. Tanisha's family, showing incredible grace and strength, requested that the county not expend those resources on a potentially futile search. Shortly after his arrest, Timothy invoked his right to counsel and refused to speak further. Without a body, prosecutors knew that securing a conviction for murder would be an immense challenge. The crime scene investigation team returned to Timothy's apartment for a much more meticulous forensic search. Using advanced forensic techniques, investigators discovered microscopic evidence that Timothy had tried to destroy. Inside the kitchen garbage disposal, they found tiny bone fragments and a piece of tooth enamel. The crime lab subsequently matched the enamel to Tanisha's dental profile. Additionally, investigators recovered charred bone fragments from the ground near the patio, where the grills had been operated. The psychological reality of the crime was far more gruesome than a simple strangulation. The evidence suggested that Timothy, in a desperate attempt to conceal his actions, had dismembered and incinerated the remains of the woman he claimed to love. The trial of the state of Texas versus Timothy Shepard began on September 29th, 2008, the prosecution faced the hurdle of presenting a murder case without a body, relying primarily on forensic fragments, the confession to Quan Nel X, and circumstantial evidence. To establish premeditation and character, the prosecution called Timothy's cousin Nicholas Shepard to the stand. Nicholas delivered shocking testimony, revealing that Timothy had previously made threats regarding Tanisha, stating that if she ever attempted to leave him, he would kill her, dismember her, and boil her remains. This testimony illustrated that the horrific method of disposal is not a spontaneous decision made in panic, but a scenario Timothy had contemplated before. Quan Nel X also testified, recounting the confession in the bathroom. In a bold move during the sentencing phase, Timothy took the stand in his own defense. He attempted to portray himself as the victim, claiming that Tanisha had attacked him with a knife and that he had acted in self-defense, blacking out during the struggle. He presented photographs of minor cuts on his hands from the night of his arrest. However, any attempt to garner sympathy was shattered during cross-examination. When the prosecutor asked Timothy about placing her body parts on the barbecue pit, Timothy corrected the prosecutor, stating that he had used a smoker, not a barbecue pit. This cold, clinical correction revealed an absence of remorse that deeply impacted the jury. The jury returned a verdict of guilty. Timothy Shepard was sentenced to 99 years in prison, the maximum penalty allowed. While the conviction could not restore the brilliant future that had been stolen from Tanisha Stewart, it ensured that a dangerous individual would remain removed from society, and it stood as a testament to the dedication of her family, the community, and the investigators who refused to let her disappear without a trace. The Shadow of Infatuation and the Case of Latrice Curtis. Our second case study takes us to Raleigh, North Carolina, where we examine how an individual's internal obsessions can project outward, resulting in a violent tragedy involving an innocent third party. On the cold winter morning of Wednesday, January 30th, 2008, at approximately 7:30, morning commuters on Interstate 540 noticed a disturbing sight. Lying in the grass on the shoulder of the busy highway was the body of a young woman. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but she was already deceased. An initial examination revealed that she had not been the victim of a pedestrian traffic accident. She had been brutally stabbed over 40 times, with severe wounds concentrated around her face, neck, and torso. Her carotid artery and jugular vein had been severed, and her vocal cords had been cut. It was a crime of extreme violence, indicating an intense, personalized rage. A short distance down the highway, investigators located a white sedan abandoned on the shoulder with its hazard lights flashing. Inside the vehicle, there were clear signs of a violent struggle, including a broken center console and blood on the driver's side door. Among the commuters slowing down to pass the crime scene that morning was Darren Curtis. He noticed the backup, saw the blue tarp covering the victim, and then spotted the white sedan. His heart sank as he recognized the vehicle. It belonged to his wife. Frantic, Darren returned to the scene where detectives confirmed his worst fears. The victim was his 21-year-old wife, Latrice Curtis. Latrice was a vibrant, ambitious business administration student at North Carolina Central University in Durham. She had grown up in a protective household as the only girl among several brothers, cherished for her infectious smile and outgoing personality. She had married Darren, a respectful former National Guard soldier, just 9 months prior. They had moved into a cozy apartment, and by all external appearances, they were a young couple embarking on a promising life together. As investigators processed the crime scene, they noted that Latrice's hands showed defensive wounds, indicating she had fought fiercely for her life. The crime scene investigators collected DNA samples from her fingernails and the steering wheel of her car, sending them to the state crime lab. To understand the motive behind such a brutal attack, detectives interviewed Darren Curtis. He explained that he had last spoken to Latrice around 10 o'clock the previous evening. She had called to say she was running late from her studies and was going to get food before heading home. Darren had gone to sleep around 11:30. When he awoke the next morning, his calls to her went straight to voicemail. Assuming she had stayed overnight with her family, he showered and left for work, only to encounter the tragedy on the highway. Investigators searched the couple's apartment and Darren's vehicle, finding no evidence of conflict. Darren showed no signs of physical injury, and his cooperation was absolute. A critical breakthrough occurred during the autopsy. Pathologists discovered a condom inside Latrice's body. There were no physical trauma marks indicating a sexual assault, suggesting that she had engaged in consensual intercourse shortly before her death. This discovery shifted the focus of the investigation toward her personal life. Subpoenaed phone records revealed a flurry of calls and text messages around midnight on the night of her disappearance. These calls were exchanged with a number registered to Stephen Randolph. Stephen Randolph was a prominent student and athlete at North Carolina Central University, an aspiring basketball player with ambitions of entering the National Basketball Association. When investigators contacted him, Stephen initially claimed they were merely classmates. However, when presented with the phone records and the forensic findings, he admitted to a secret, passionate affair. Stephen explained that on the night of Tuesday, January 29th, Latrice had visited his residence. During their intimate encounter, the condom had become lodged inside her. Unable to retrieve it, Latrice decided to return home to handle the situation in private, leaving around 10 o'clock. Stephen claimed that after she left, he drove to the residence of his primary girlfriend, Velma Newton. During that drive and later in the night, Latrice began calling him repeatedly, expressing panic that she might become pregnant. Stephen insisted he had nothing to do with her murder, pointing out that an unwanted pregnancy could have jeopardized his athletic career, but denying that he would resort to violence. To verify Stephen's timeline, detectives interviewed his roommate, Robert Reeves, a 43-year-old local pastor and motivational speaker known in the community as the Bishop. Reeves had rented a basement room to Stephen when the young athlete was facing financial difficulties. Reeves confirmed that Latrice had visited Stephen that evening. He stated that he had left the house at 8:15 to attend a church service and returned at 11:30, at which point both Stephen's and Latrice's cars were gone. Reeves also mentioned that Stephen owned a collection of knives and swords, which immediately drew the attention of investigators. However, as detectives dug deeper, Stephen's girlfriend, Velma Newton, provided critical context. She verified that Stephen had arrived at her home around 10 o'clock and stayed until 1 in the morning. More importantly, she revealed that she and Stephen had been subjected to a series of anonymous, threatening phone